So, we will begin now. Otto and Helmut schwätzen. Yeah, hello. We will begin with our session about children and justice and social policy. You see, our session is only remotely connected to the conference theme of taxation.
Social policy.
Social policy, yes. I don't know if we will say anything about social policy either. And we have no chair for this session because we are only two persons and we know each other quite well. So we thought we can do without a third person. So the first talk will be given by Gunter Graf from the International Research Center for Social and Ethical Questions in Salzburg. It's the partner institution of the Center for Ethics and Poverty Research. And Gunter and I, we share office over there, so we also are quite familiar with our work. And Gunter will talk about children, well-being and justice. This is a different title.
It's almost the same.
It's almost the same. So please, Gunter, you have about 20 minutes
okay.
Now and we will discuss. Yeah.
Zwei Bücher oder ein Buch rauszunehmen, das ganz oben ist. Ach so, dann geht's, okay.
Es ist zur Vermeidung des Grün.
Okay.
We are trying to avoid the green. The green here.
Okay, so let's start. Yeah, as Gottfried already said, I think it's safe to say that children are important addressees of social policy. So there are definitely there's a lot of rhetoric in the public discourse about supporting children, helping children, often their families, not always. That's an interesting thing to note, maybe. And there are many support programs, definitely in the developed world, in developed countries. There are also many NGOs interested in children, in supporting children, and trying to put forward also social policy issues for children, definitely. And then it's interesting to note at the same time that the normative discussion about children and justice has been rather neglected in social and political philosophy, I would say. It's true that there is some discussion, but it's definitely not in the mainstream theories, I would say. And so I would like to address some basic questions concerning the question, what is owed to children as a matter of justice? And as I said, in my perception at least, most theories of justice are not sensitive to these questions. Maybe they think that it's implicitly there and that it's not a real problem, but there's not many explicit treatment, or not much explicit treatment. So there are at least, I would say, 4 very important questions that should be addressed. So one is definitely, who are the subjects of justice? So if we should discuss these questions always related to a national state, or if we should address it worldwide. This question is also a tricky one because there is not full consensus, or there is a lot of discussion about the concept of childhood itself, about different cultures, and I think this would also fit into this question. So who are the addressees of justice if we talk about justice for children? I will not talk a lot about this question. Then the second one, which will be in the center of the talk, is on the basis of what kind of information should the circumstances of children or the life situations of children be judged and compared to the circumstances of other children, maybe of adults. And sometimes this question is framed with the wording, what is the metric of justice in question. So I will try to discuss this question. I'm not sure if I'm able to give clear answers, but at least I try to elaborate on some points. Then another very important question definitely is what kind of distribution of this identified currency of justice should be pursued by a society. So, for example, you could think that economic goods, some kind of economic goods are the currency of justice, and the possession of these goods is important. And then you have to think about the just distribution. So should everybody have the same, or so these kind of things. So what is the distribution rule? And then another one, and I think Gottfried will talk more about this one, and that's also a very tricky one if you think about children. And it's also in the political discourse, actually. So which persons and institutions are responsible for securing a just distribution, for securing justice for children? And here you come very quickly in the sphere of the family and the relation state, family, children, and that's a difficult and sometimes also very polemically discussed question. So, as I said, I would like to focus a bit on the question what should be distributed, or if it's not possible to distribute it directly, what should we try to get to change to get a just distribution. So there are definitely different theories in this kind of regard, and I would like to address and talk about utilities, like as it is defended in utilitarianism. I would look quickly into primary goods as it is defended by John Rawls, and then I would like to address the concept of functionings and capabilities as it was introduced by Sen and somehow different by Martha Nussbaum. Yeah, and of course these families of theories probably you should say are very complicated and complex, and yeah, I try to do justice to them, but it will be difficult in a comprehensive way. But so I think what should we expect from a metric of justice for children? I think it should be able to reflect the different needs and requirements people have in different phases of their life cycle. So this is very important. And it should be able to grasp the concept of well-being of children in a comprehensive way. So I think we should expect these two tasks. So what to say about utilities? So definitely it is the metric employed by utilitarianism, and there are different forms, and I think it gets complicated if you look at it in detail. I will focus more on utilitarianism that is normally associated with Bentham, so this kind of utilitarianism. And utilities are traditionally defined as happiness or pleasure. So this is very important. And therefore they are strongly related to mental characteristics, and they have a very strong subjective connotation. Yes. Usually, not necessarily, but usually, or many utilitarians defend the view that the aim of a just society is to maximize the utility level in a given society. And yeah, probably this means that we should think about how to maximize also happiness in the life cycle also of a person. So we should not just look at specific points in time, but probably across life. I think if we think about children, this makes sense. I think there are different problems connected to this kind of metric. That is probably also a problem for in the case of adults, but I think it's more. You see it in a stronger way if you look at children. So one is, and this is one of the central themes Sen and Nussbaum take and criticize utilitarianism in this way, that there is this problem of adaptive preferences. So that you or people generally adapt their preferences references to the circumstances. And this kind of critique is often also connected to issues in development politics, where there are clear cases where people are happy, let's say, but if you look at more objective measures, like the health status, for example, their life expectancy, they do quite, it's not very good compared to other countries. So it seems to be a problem, and I think in the case of children, this is even stronger, that you can learn to be happy or satisfied, and if you look at other life dimensions, there are real problems there. Another problem I would see is that it neglects the multidimensionality of the well-being of children. So if you try to, if you say that happiness is the most important point, you're not able to address the different dimensions of a human life. I also would say that it does not justice to the distinctiveness of childhood, also compared to adulthood, and especially if you think that the developmental perspective is important, so that the development of certain skills and abilities matters. If you just look at happiness, I think you will not have to focus on this aspect. Yeah, and then there are maybe different worries you can think about, but they are not really especially connected to children, and you will find it in the literature. So I will skip this one. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to address is utilities in a very broad way, and I raised some worries that are there. Another option that is very influential in political philosophy is definitely to look at John Rawls' theory of justice. And as you know, he asked the central question how a society should look like, in which free and equal persons live and work together for the benefit of all. So I think that is at the center of his work. And then he asked which kind of principles govern these institutional arrangements of such a society, and how should the benefits and burdens be distributed. And he also introduces this famous thought experiment of the original position, where people come together and they think about exactly this, how to arrange the society, but they do not know about their characteristics, and also about their position in society, and also not really the society they're in. Yeah, I think you're familiar with this. And he stipulates that the persons there in such a circumstance that want to think about the principles that should govern their societies, they are characterized by they have a capacity for a sense of justice and the capacity for a conception of the good. So this is very important to them. They know that they have this. And Rawls identifies some goods, and he calls them primary goods, social primary goods to be precise, that are needed in order to exercise these two moral powers, and they should be distributed in a fair way. Yeah, I will not talk about what this means exactly, but that's the idea, that these kinds of goods are distributed in a fair way. And he thinks that rights and liberties are among these goods, powers and opportunities, income and wealth is very important to judge how well somebody is off in a society. And he also lists the social basis of self-respect. And what is important here is that these primary goods are designed in a way that they are neutral towards different conceptions of the good, and only means to personal relative ends. So he does not want to say what a good life is, but he wants to give everybody a fair share of things that are helpful, that you can live your life in a way you think appropriate. And obviously there is something, you could term it agency assumption, which is very strong there, that persons have the moral powers and exercise them, that they are morally responsible for what they do, and that these persons respect the equal liberty of their fellow citizens. And now, if you look at this, there are clearly some limits. If you think about children, if you want to bring children in place. So definitely they do not fully possess the two moral powers, this is clear. And also if you look at them, they don't seem to be designed for children. So it's really for persons who have the two moral powers and who are fully autonomous to decide about their life. So if you look at this in this way, there are clear limitations. But of course, and there are these suggestions that you should supplement these kind of primary goods in a way that they help in the development of the two moral powers. So it's not so important. You should think about these things that help children to get there. You can do this, but I still think there are some limits in this attempt. So there seem to be goods that are valuable for children, even if they do not enhance the development of the two moral powers. So the way you treat children, it can matter, even if it's not necessary that it helps to develop them. And you will look at childhood only as a preparatory stage for later life, if you do it in this way. And the child's point of view is not considered at all, so it's really just to look at children as future adults. And I think it's also, it's not possible to solve this problem in an ad hoc way. I think it's quite, it's anchored in his theory on different parts. So for example, at least in his book, The Theory of Justice, he has this kind of famous head of family assumption, so that the representatives in the original position are head of families. You can just discuss about this. He does not defend it in his later work, but it's at least in his early work quite important. And also his conception of the person, and including this ability to cooperate, is very strong. So it seems that you are kind of committed to look at this future conception of, to have this future orientated or strongly future orientated conception of childhood. Yeah. So these are some worries I would raise in regard to Rawls's account. And then there is another one which I think might be better to address questions of justice for children, and this is connected, as I said, to the work of Sen and Nussbaum, and they work with these concepts of functionings and capabilities. They say, they're quite easy concepts actually, so functionings in this sense are beings and doings of a person. So it's not really good that you have and that you can do something, but it's really about the life you lead. So examples normally given in the literature is something like being adequately nourished would be a functioning, being part of a social network, also being happy. So this definitely is one thing, but it's not everything, like utilitarians would argue. So some are close, some of these functionings are close to subjective metrics, like being happy, and others are quite close to resource-based metrics, because a lot of functionings you just can have if you have the resources to have them, to convert them into functionings. Like being adequately nourished, like without food it's not possible. And then human life consists of a plurality of such functionings. Yeah, and another aspect of this approach is that you have to look very closely at conversion factors, and these are the factors influencing the transformation of a good into a functioning. So this claim of human diversity is very strong, much stronger than in the Rawlsian framework, and I think it opens also the door to be more child sensitive in a way. So capabilities is the second important concept. So they are the effective opportunities to realize valuable functionings. So to undertake actions and activities and to be that one values and to be the person one wants to be as far as this is possible. So there are definitely also some question marks there, but that's how capabilities are conceived. And it's also important to conceptualize capability always in relation to each other. So not just one. So like the real opportunity to be adequately nourished, but always in sets because they might work against each other. And capabilities then express the different life paths open to a person. So the focus does not lie on goods, but on what someone can do with these goods. And as I said, you acknowledge more strongly this human diversity and the variations in the life circle. There are definitely also some problems here because, as I said, Rawls has this very strong assumption about the two moral powers and this focus on rationality. And something, at least if you read Zen, is happening also here. So that there is, in my opinion, that's a danger. Maybe you disagree. That you also have this just future-oriented perspective. I don't want to say that this is not important, but I think you should be careful not to forget childhood also as something valuable in itself and not just as a preparation for being a future autonomous person. And so there should be more attempts to conceptualize this this well-being of children that is conceptualized via functionings and capabilities, also in this life course perspective, so that you look at now at childhood, but also at the future. Yeah, and then it will be necessary, I will not be able to present this here, maybe Gottfried will say more about this, to think really more about what it means to have child-specific functionings and capabilities, and also what the notion of capabilities means in the case of children, because, like as I said, capabilities are very much related to freedom and freedom of choice, and how you deal with this in the context of children. Yeah, and some people are working on this, so they try to build on this notion of evolving capabilities. I see that the time is so that you look already at children as agents and as somebody developing their potentials, and and that these notions of agency, capacity, and opportunity are related to each other, and that they are in a steady dynamic process of development. This also, if you look at children as agents, you will have to think about how to incorporate like the subjective assessments and decisions and sentiments of children, and you can also give them normative weight. So this is also very complicated issues. And also there's considerable disagreement, as I see it, between philosophers who generally think that these subjective assessments, or at least there's a tendency that they think they are not so important, and many social scientists who think that they are very important, and that we have to be very careful not to put the focus only on adult assessments of children and childhood, but we should really believe children what they say. And they are definitely, if you think about this concept of evolving capabilities, which are than specific to children in many regards, that there are additional conversation factors compared to adults. So definitely there are other social norms and power relations. The way we organize our society does not give children many freedoms. Also now thinking about the concept of childhood, what we understand with this, but there are definitely differences. And also we should not neglect psychological and also biological differences. So that's not too... They also depend very much on the decisions of others, more as in the case of adults. I mean, I think we also have to acknowledge this in the case of adults, but in children it's more still. And also, and this is maybe interesting for social policy issues, that they depend very much on the functionings and capabilities and opportunities of others, and particularly of their parents and guardians. So this is also the problems we have in poverty research, between the transfer of poverty between generations, for example. Yeah, they can also be constrained and reinforced by already existing functionings and capabilities. And then we also have to think about different functionings and capabilities relevant for different ages. Yeah, and I will not go into this, and stop with this, and thank you for your attention.